to be back. The topic of tonight that was offered, how to change your mazal.
Really?
So everybody is looking for magical solutions, how to change the mazal. What is mazal? The word mazal comes from the word nozelim. Nozelim mean Lebanon, flowing. There is a hashpa'ah, there is a influence from above that comes to us, and it comes from a very high level, which is called Lebanon. Lebanon, as expressed in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs of Shlomo HaMelech, Lev Nun. Lev, the heart, Nun, the 50 gates of understanding. Our neshama, our soul, is made of different parts, has different levels. The highest levels of the soul are not in the body. It is the lowest levels of the soul which are in the body. And actually, to go from one level of the soul to the other, to be revealed in the body, is a tremendous work. Tzaddikim worked all their lives to be able to go from one dimension to the other. And the higher you go in your soul, the more that level of understanding, which is called Mazal, the more it's revealed to you. We just spoke about the coming out of Egypt, the splitting of the sea. To get out of a situation of meitzar, of limitations, and to expand your limitations, to get out of your limitations, that is transforming the mazal. Thank you for joining us. But how do you do this? If you think that tonight I'm going to give you some type of special, spiritual, magical solution to change your mazal, forget it. You could change your mazal in that way, but your mazal would not belong to you. It is possible to have a Kabbalistic tool to be able to make a change of combinations in your name, to illuminate the name of a person, and to change the energy. This was done by Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa one day was so poor that his wife did not have any oil to light the Shabbat candles. So she complained to her husband. She said, "We have only vinegar." He said, "So what's the big deal? Mi she'amar lashemen sheyadlik, yagid lachomet sheyadlik." Whoever ordered that the oil should be able to light will order that the vinegar should be able to light. And that's what happened. In later generations, just less than 300 years ago, the holy Baal Shem Tov was teaching, and there were no more candles to be able to follow in the books. So he said to his student, go by the door, there's forms itself, icicles. Go get an icicle and light it up. And it lit. Basically, there is the name of the object, there is the shape of the object, and then you have the energy of the object. The energy of the object is actually its name. And if you go to the source, you're able to, the source of its name, to make some differences and change and actually bring about a new flow of energy through the same channel. But how do you do that? In a natural, sustainable way. Because I remember one day, a millionaire came to me and said to me, Rabbi, can you do what this Kabbalist did for me? I said, what are you talking about? He said, yes, my son was engaged to a non-Jewish girl, and I went to see him, this big Kabbalist, and he did something, and boom, he just out of the blue broke off with her. But then he met another non-Jewish girl, and I had to go back to the Kabbalist, and he did it again. And now he's back with someone else. Can you do something? So there's two dimensions. Kabbalistically speaking, you can do stuff. But what happens when you go to the chiropractor and he cracks you up with his jokes or with the bill after the treatment, and you feel good, but you continue practicing and going back to the default mode of just going back to your bad habits? What's going to happen? You're going to be like this. Your whole energy will not be the same. Today I had lunch with somebody that was in the hospital 2 days ago. Spent the whole night with a battery of tests, and he tells me the doctor ordered that I should change my diet and I need to exercise. And I'm sitting with him, and we're at the restaurant having lunch, and I said, so what did you order? So he said, I ordered a pizza. I said, really? Didn't you tell me you need to change? So we changed it to a salad. He wasn't so happy to have me as a partner for lunch. We go back to the same mode all the time. We ask to change our mazal, but we are acting like yo-yos. Right? Yo-yo in Spanish, yo, me, right? We go back to the old me, and therefore it's not sustainable for our mazal, for that he'ara, for that Shekhinah, that presence of God to dwell with us. So let's go back in history and let's see what it says in the Zohar Kadosh about the prophet Elisha. The prophet Elisha used to visit a woman, and this woman said, Hine ish Elokim, a man of God, Kadosh hu, a holy man, over alenu tamid, always comes to visit us. Let's make a place where he will be able to rest. Let's make a small attic. Venasim lo sham, and the way we're going to decorate this attic, we're going to put a bed, mitah, shulchan, a table, kiseh, a chair, umenorah, a candelabra, chandelier. Ve'aya bevo elenu yasur shama. When he comes to this place, he will have where to settle. The Zohar Kadosh says that these four elements, the bed, the table, the chair, and the menorah, are dalet tikunei shechinta. The four tikunim, the four pillars, the four recipients, the four channels for God's presence to dwell. We want mazal The ultimate mazal is that God should accompany you in everything that you do. When the Jewish people went to the land of Israel and they had a bad perspective of the land of Israel, what happened? They lost their opportunity to go up to the land. When they heard about the punishment, a group of people decided, we're going to go up to the land. Moshe Rabbeinu said, be careful. The Aron of Hashem, the Ark of God, is not going with you. You will be decimated. And that's exactly what happened. If God is not with me, if God's presence, is God's Shekhinah is not with me, I don't have mazal. I have nothing. The Asara Ma'amarot writes that when Yaakov came to see his father Yitzhak to get the bracha, his father smelled him and said, Re'eh reach beni kereach sadeh asher beracho Hashem, nichnas ito ruach gan Eden, Rashi says. Yitzhak smelled, and he smelled the odor of Gan Eden. When, on the other hand, Esav came, it says, Vayecherad harada gedolad meod, he trembled with all of his bones. He saw the opening of hell under his feet open. Says Yasara Ma'amarot, according to the thought, speech, and action of a person, Nirshamim ba'avir, in the space of a person, in his atmosphere, all these thought, speech, and actions are inscribed and they're marked in his space. And therefore, you have a person that you want to be close to because he smells like Gan Eden. You feel elevated, you feel energized in his presence, you feel holy, you feel calm. And you have a person, as soon as you get in their presence, you feel your energy is like going and being sucked by the abyss. So, when we talk about mazal, makom, zman, lashon, mem, zayin, lamed. Makom, creating the right true space. Zman, being in the right time. Lashon, finding the right expression. Makom, space. It says in Parashat Kitisa, Hine makom iti. Space is under my dominion. The Midrash says on this, Hu mekomo shel olam ve'ein ha'olam mekomo. He is the space of the world. The world is not his space. Let's explain. What is space? The Rebbe Rashab, in a discourse, Ha'umnam Tav Resh Mem Gimel, expresses the following. He says, if you take the name of God and you square it, Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. So, Yud times Yud, 10 times 10 is 100. Then you have Hey times Hey, 5 times 5 is 25. I'm sorry, it's very hard for me to read. Right? And then you have Vav times Vav, 6 times 6 is 36. And then you have again Hey times Hey, which is 25. Total of all this, 1 186. 186 is the numerical value for the word makom. The word makom, space. Hu mekomo shel olam. He is the space of the world. He is the energy of the world. He brings the world into existence. Now let's explain what means space. Makom, there is 3 dimensions of space. There is what we call makom hamemale, the filling space. For now, for example, I am filling this chair. The seat, I'm sorry, not the chair. The seat is being filled by me. It would be filled less if there wasn't so much nice food here. That's one expression of space, what is actually being filled. Then you have another expression of space, the surrounding space, or asovev, the space which you are filling. It's not what I fill, it's what surrounds me which is called the space. I'm in the space. And then there is a Targum, there is an Aramaic translation of Rabbi Yonatan ben Uziel that translates the word space, makom, into the word makor, source. That is the space. Let's explain. Makom hamemale, there is what we deal with within the limitations of ourselves. With my limitations, I accomplish in my space what I can. There are mental limitations, emotional limitations. There's the history of my upbringing. There is who I am, the physical limitations, chas v'shalom, etc. These are my limitations, my space. Then there is going out of my space, trying to go out into the space that surrounds me, how I affect the world. And then there is the way I connect to my source, which is the essence of my space. How is my source, my space? I'm going to give you the example of a womb, a placenta inside the womb and the umbilical cord. That small umbilical cord is actually the source of life through which the child grows and lives. But that is his space. His source is his space of existence. So when we talk about makom, the space that I fill, the space that I affect, the space I connect to, my source, actually transform the atmosphere, the spiritual avir, which is around me. Avir. Avir, in Hebrew, if you don't mind, I'm going to get up. We had a napkin before to...
Right here.
Here? We said makom. If you look at the word avir, let's make some space right here. Avir, Aleph, Vav, Yud, Resh. Interesting. The word avir is actually the word or and the letter Yud. Ki beka Hashem tzur olamim, God's name starts with a yud, the level of chokhmah, wisdom. V'chokhmah me'ayin timatzeh, the chokhmah touches the ayin, the level of mazal, which is called ayin, and it's able to draw it down in the light. Avir, the atmosphere, the air, is actually that or yud. It's that illumination of chokhmah, of wisdom. I always like to say, what is the letter in English for Aleph? What? A. Thank you. What is the letter that looks like a Vav? I. What is on top of the I? A little dot, a Yud. And what is a letter which is like a Resh? An R. Air. Anyways, that's my own thing.
I love that.
So, Or Yud. The letter Or Yud, Avir, you create your atmosphere around you. When you actually connect yourself to your source, you draw down the Yud, the light of Hashem, the Or Yud, through Avir, through breathing, through creating that space. When you create that space by changing the way you think, changing the way you speak, changing the way you act. You might have thought that to change my mazal, I need to change my spiritual makeup. No. Your spiritual makeup is perfect. It needs no repair. When you elevate it, it elevates everything with it. What is going to make your spiritual makeup change? Once you change your physical makeup. So, I'm not saying you should use Revlon instead of another brand. That's not what I mean. Your physical makeup is the way, what you do with thought, speech, and action. It says in Tanya that the levushim, the garments of the soul, which are thought, speech, and action, even though they might be lower spiritually than the soul, their source is so high, they have the power to draw and to bring the soul to a much higher level that it can't reach itself. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that this pen, this marker, is the soul. Sorry, this is a very physical example. And this is the cap. This is the body. It's unconceivable that I would be pulling the cap without pulling the marker. The marker is attached to the cap. If I transform the body, I automatically draw down the soul a little more. And that's why one day when somebody came to see Admur HaZaken, the Alter Rebbe, and told him, your Hasidim are bluffers. They bluff. They're fakers. They call themselves Hasidim, pious ones. But really, they're faking it. So the Admur HaZaken smiled and he was very happy. He said, it says in the Mishnah, I think it's a Mishnah in Pe'ah, that a person that pretends to be needy when he is not needy will not leave this world before he becomes needy. A person that pretends to limp, eventually, God forbid, he will limp. So a person that pretends to be a chassid, a pious person, for sure he will become a pious person before he dies. A thief is not somebody that can steal, it's somebody that steals. Somebody that is generous is not somebody that has a lot of money in his bank account. It's somebody that gives. A Talmid Chacham, a sage of Torah, is not somebody that can study, it's somebody that studies. The action and the repetition of the action actually create your makeup. And it permits to be that channel through which the neshama, the soul, is going to express itself. And today, scientifically speaking, it's true. The way we wire our brains today, we create neural connections. We create neural connections when we repeat an action over and over again. Interestingly enough, I think it's Norman Deutsch from Toronto, famous doctor, which speaks about brain mapping and how the brain heals the body, explains how they made experiments with monkeys. I'm sorry, it's pretty awful. They actually determine where in the brain, for example, the 5 fingers are. And they give a little electroshock in the finger, and right away they're able to see where each finger is. So they cut a finger. And eventually, the space of the brain which was occupied by that finger is now being replaced by the fingers which act. The actions that you do, it's just like when you're in front of a computer. When you're in front of the computer screen, you have the screen that's open and you have all the screens that are closed. So the bad news is that when we repeat an action over and over again, this action becomes the way we are. And therefore, it becomes the way we are, and this is the window that's open in the brain. And that's why we desire this over and over again. It becomes like we become addicted to it. That's the bad news. We just created a bunch of neural connections. They've tried this with pianists, people that would start playing piano 8 hours a day. And they saw how this is really where the brain is more than anywhere else. The good news is that if you do a little less of this action and you start a new action, then suddenly the new window is going to appear on your screen. And you're able to change and transform yourself completely by practicing a new action. If I practice something over and over again, eventually it will become who I am. My body is going to actually be connected to this action. This is brought down in the Magid Mesharim. The Magid Mesharim is a sefer, is a book which was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo of the revelations of the Magid, the teller, the Mishnah which was inside of him, which would speak and reveal secrets of Torah to him. At the beginning of the Magid Mesharim, there's about 30 different injunctions, things that the angel tells him to do and not to do. One of the things he tells him is, when you take pleasure in a certain food, right away change to another food. Why? He says, because once your body gets used to eating the same food over and over again, it will demand it. It will ask for it. Think about it. Think about 3 restaurants you go to, And how normally this restaurant, this is what I order. That restaurant, this is what I order. I don't want to disappoint my body with something new. So, talking about changing the mazal, I need to be able to create a new set of habits. Thought. At the level of thought, I need to be able to transform and open a new perspective which is positive. I have a negative thought that comes to my mind about my husband, my wife, my child, God, myself. Says that Tzemach Tzedek, I have to push it away like if it was a thought of idol worship. That's how I have to push it away. All the negative thoughts that come to our mind, I'm nothing, I'm nobody, nobody's going to ever look at me, I'll never have friends, and whatever it is. And people are looking at me this way, and so on and so forth. You have to train yourself. Nonsense. This is nonsense. So I have a trick that I always give people, because when I was in yeshiva, I had a partner, Rabbi Yochanan Morozov, and in the middle of our Gemara study, Talmud study, he would write notes. And I would look at him, and I noticed the notes had nothing to do with the Talmud we're studying. I told him, Yochanan, what are you doing? He said, look, in the middle of my studies, I have this little voice inside of me that tells me I'm a good for nothing. I'm a big animal. I have desires that, I'm so despicable and disgusting, God hates me, and so on. And I have all these thoughts that come through my mind. So instead of dealing with it right now, which would just paralyze me for the rest of the day, and I wouldn't be able to function because we all are at a certain level emotional beings, I just write it down. I'm an idiot. I'm despicable. I'm a lowlife. I'm this, I'm that, I'm whatever it is. Everybody hates me. Right? All the negative things. And then, on my terms, before I go to sleep, I review all the things that my little voice inside of me said. And in most cases, 95% is absolute nonsense. Start training your brain to re-express things. Instead of criticizing, pointing the finger, like the Baal Shem Tov says, when you point a finger at someone, you have 3 fingers pointing at you. Think to yourself 1 second. Instead of making a judgment, maybe I'm going to ask a question. Did I ever tell you the story? After a year and a half of being married, I'm going to be celebrating soon, B'ezrat Hashem, 25 years. A quarter of a century. Wow. So, thank God for both of us. My wife, God bless her, when I used to come back after a long day running, giving classes, 9:30, 10 o'clock, the kitchen was not clean. And every night there was this ritual. I would come home, and for 15 minutes, I would help her clean the kitchen. Can you stop the video? I'm just joking. It's in my book. So, for a year and a half, I was boiling inside. What, is she trying to teach me a lesson? We're just a newlywed. We only have 1 child. She can't clean a kitchen. She has to wait for me to clean the kitchen. Like, show me, teach me. You're helping at home. I mean, what's the matter with the lady? Till one day, I actually expressed it. And she said to me, what are you talking about? After such a long day, you leave home early, you come home late, you're exhausted. If we didn't have that 15 minutes of doing something together, when would we ever communicate? You would throw yourself in your bed and just go to bed and sleep. She was looking for bonding, and I was accusing her of trying to push me around and be controlling. This thing of living in our mind and not changing the perspective. I was speaking to a father today, and I told him, you have an extraordinary opportunity given to you today. His son came home. Says, you have an opportunity to do the best possible therapy that your son needs. By changing the way you are. And now showing him the true happy person you are. Wow. It's an opportunity. It's these things that we do in our mind that change the perspective. It's an effort. It's a tremendous effort. But this can take place when we make the effort. Before we speak. Before we look out and we start judging. The previous Lubavitcher Rebbe once asked his father, why do we have two eyes? And he said, one eye is to look at the good that's in somebody else and to look for it, to point it out, and for you to learn from it and to want to be like this. It doesn't matter the age, it doesn't matter who it is. Mikol melamedai iskalti. David HaMelech, King David says, I learned from everybody. Ume'oivai tehakemeni mitzvotecha. Even from my enemy, I learn how to do better your mitzvot. With the left eye, whatever negative you see in another, you realize that you have it inside of you. If not, you would not perceive it in somebody else, and you try to fix it. There's a Chassid, a follower of the Admor HaZaken, that when he heard this, he worked on himself for 6 months before entering to have his first audience. This level of mental transformation, of changing your perspective, changes the energy around you. And then when it translates itself into speech, and suddenly instead of saying, oh, it's terrible, it's a disaster. I remember a few years ago, during the summer months, it's a little difficult for the fundraising, and there we were in minus in the account. We wanted to prove that we are a non-for-profit organization. So, the group, the committee at the time, so one said, it's a disaster. He put on the group. I wrote back, a disaster? This is a disaster? Oh, no, I'm sorry. You know what a disaster is? We use words. And the moment we use words, we have no idea the weight of these words. The same expression we use, we transform it into a positive expression. We just created Baruch Shy Amar v'haya olam. God creates reality with His speech. We have the possibility to change and to create that reality right there and then by saying something in another way. The Rebbe spent his lifetime doing that. Don't call it a house of the sick, Bet Cholim, call it Merkaz Refuah, a place of healing. The Torah, the Talmud, refers to people which are blind as Sagi Neor, somebody which is illuminated with light, he can't see. The cemetery is not called Bet Metim, Bet Hayim, it's called the house of the living. The reactions we have. But this takes training. We need to train ourselves into how to establish our space, our actions. There's default actions. There's a law on Shabbat in chapters 308 to 310, which is called the laws of Muktzeh. Muktzeh. No, it's not a Chinese word. Muktzeh means something which is set aside. There's certain things we can't touch on Shabbat. For example, if I see that the nice, beautiful paintings on the ceiling are not straight, I'm not allowed to fix them. But that's for another reason. If I find a hammer or a phone, it's muktzeh. I can't touch it. Why? Because if I'm going to touch anything and everything, eventually I'll end up doing something which is prohibited on Shabbat. Imagine this extraordinary training. You're about to take something, put the natural hand, right? Go, and you say, no. The control of one's actions. Thought, speech, action, perception. How I'm going to use my hands. I give an example to this man. So when I was talking to him, the same man that his son is here from out of town, and is going to spend a little while, I told him, the repetition of your new actions can heal the situation. So I told him, do you know when, for example, unfortunately, those who grew up receiving some slaps in the face. So the natural thing is, I told him, when you say this, for example, to your child, and you're talking like this, and you raise your hand at this moment in excitement that you're talking, and his reaction is something like avoiding the slap when you didn't want to slap him. So I told him, how do you repair that? If you do it enough, that instead of that slap, you actually take him, give him a kiss, or give him a caress on the cheek, he's going to see that that movement is no longer associated to a negative thing, but rather to a positive thing. The expressions of the face, which are marked deeply in the brain, right? One, it's very difficult to get rid of them. The things that we absorbed in our childhood. But once we see, it opens a new perspective. It said both have to make efforts. The child, but it's everybody has to make an effort to try to put himself in the other person's understanding. But once we do this, in thought, speech, and action, and we start doing these small changes, the small changes make a big difference. Like somebody told me, Rabbi, you want to eat healthier? Crowd it out. He said, what? Crowd it out. I didn't ever hear an expression like this. What's crowded out? It means that if there's some party, some person that is really not welcome here. So of course, if we are three, it's going to be very unpleasant to have that person here. But if I bring 50 of my friends and we're having fun, the person is going to be so insignificant that maybe he'll leave by himself. The same thing. Make sure you eat a cucumber every day, an apple, drink 6 cups of water, and slowly but surely you'll crowd it out. There won't be any more space for junk and nonsense. Changing your habits, because really, that's where it is. That's where the Mazal is. It's in the habits, the good habits that we have, having a routine, having success rituals, not goals, success rituals. You know what a success ritual is? I want to be able to get to this. In order to get to this, it's just a nice dream. But if every day I know that for 15 minutes I'm doing something towards it, that's my success ritual, which will get me there. How did Brad get almost 700 videos on our YouTube channel? I commend you, because on my case, almost every week, and we've been very good, every week meeting, and for an hour. Sometimes we did 3 videos. Sometimes nothing came out of it. Sometimes 12 videos came out, or 6 videos came out. But eventually, all the parashiot in Hebrew were done. And now, the ones in English. And eventually, etc., etc. What am I doing every day that's a ritual that's going to put me in a new mode? Thought, speech, action. And am I monitoring it? If you can't measure something, it has no value. It's a lot of movement. You measure. Did I do it today? Yes, I did it. And you note for all these things, and you take 3 goals for the next 3 months. And you say, these are the only 3 goals. These are going to be the central goals of my life. Then you're starting to create a keli, a vessel, to be able to change your mazal. Today is part 1. Part 2 is going to be to explain, according to the Zohar, what are these 4 recipients that make that the Shekhinah, God's presence, should be with you in everything that you do, and that suddenly things around you change and you suddenly become more supernatural than under the limitations of nature. And next time we'll explain as well what is the ultimate level of space. Or you know what, I'll explain it right now because I don't want to keep you. The word in Hebrew, we said makom. Makom, the filling space. Now it's my turn. It's okay. Blessing and success. Makom. It's okay. Wait. It's only water. Okay, it's only water. Makom in Hebrew. If you fill the space with itself, look what's going to happen. Every letter needs to be spelled out. We said we need to fill the space. You fill the space, you surround the space, you get to the source. Mem is mem, mem. Kuf is kuf, vav, and pe. Vav is vav, vav. Mem again is mem, mem. Mem, mem, 80. Kuf, vav, pe, 186. Makom, interesting. Vav, 12. Mem, mem, 80. How much is that? What is 358? Mashiach. When we fulfill our mission, when we fill our space and we start influencing our surroundings and we connect to our source, we can actually live within the space of Mashiach. There was a great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk. He lived at the foot, he had a Bet Midrash, a yeshiva, at the foot of the Mount of Olives. One day, they were blowing the shofar. There was a sound of shofar in the Mount of Olives. The students ran out and they said, it's the shofar of Mashiach. What did he do? He opened the window, stuck his head outside, and he said, no, it's not the shofar of Mashiach. Why did he have to stick his head outside? Because in his dimension, he lived Mashiach. But the world, that space, was not affected yet. To prepare ourselves for Mashiach means to prepare ourselves. Everyone is another element in the great equation which brings to equal 358 Mashiach. And that starts with our space. Once we change our space, transform our space, we make space for the Geulah. God bless you.